Good morning, everyone. We will start briefly. I think a lot of people are still jumping from another meeting, so I'll be waiting 2 more minutes to start. In the meantime, please tell where you're coming from and what organization maybe you're joining us from. You can do this, of course, in the chat. I can see all of Europe being represented already. Hi, Hannah. From the UK as well, people joining. Hi, Consuelo. Our speaker from next week is also here, which is going to be on gender and migration. Indeed, it is sunny in Brussels. It's a unique moment in Belgium. Okay, maybe I'll start. I think everyone can see my slides. So hello everyone and welcome. Thank you all for joining on this webinar on gender and disability organized by the International Federation of Pedestrians as part of the European Horizon project Just Streets. If I can click to the next slide, just please keep your microphones muted and cameras. We have a Q&A session at the end. We have 2 amazing speakers that will be very happy to answer your questions. So please keep them muted until then. Just a few words on the International Federation of Pedestrians. We are a UN-accredited NGO. We are a network of organizations across the globe that are advocating for safe, inviting pedestrian space and access for all. And we have about 50 member organizations spread around the world with over more than 40 countries. So we have each continent represented. And I am 𝐲𝐨𝐮'𝐥𝐥. I'm the project officer for International Federation of Pedestrians, and I'll be moderating. Before providing a bit of context of today's webinar and discussion, I would like to give the floor to Paula. Paula is our communications director of the EU Horizon Just Streets project, so she will briefly introduce that all to you. Paula,
Yes, thank you, Julian. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us from so many places in the world. We're very happy that you're joining us this morning. A lot of you already know about Just Streets. Those who don't, we are a Horizon Europe funded project that brings together cities, researchers, practitioners across Europe to rethink how streets are designed, used, and governed. The aim is to move away from car-centric planning and create inclusive, sustainable, and people-centered streets. And our focus is on mobility justice and the everyday needs of groups often underrepresented in transport decision-making. Hence this webinar today. And importantly, this project goes beyond research. On our website, and I'm going to put the link in the chat in a second, if you go to the Learn tab, you will see that the project's It's the project's dedicated knowledge page on the website, and you'll find practical tools, frameworks, lessons from our pilot cities that practitioners can directly apply in their new contexts. And you can also subscribe on this very same page to receive updates from us as new resources and insights are released throughout the year. This is our plan for 2026, to take all the wonderful research our partners have done and make it accessible to our audiences. So I'm going to post this link here in the chat room, and also feel free to follow us on LinkedIn because we are very active there. There's a lot to share throughout the year. So we hope you will join us on this journey.
Thank you, Paula. That's really great introduction of Just Streets. And today we gathered to shed a bit of light on a topic that is really underrepresented and under-researched. It's the intersection of gender and disability in public space and urban mobility. Historically, cities have been mainly planned by and for able-bodied men. As a result, we often forget how diverse society really is, including many people who do not identify as male, white, heterosexual, or able-bodied. In this webinar, we use a broad and inclusive understanding of women and of gender. We want to reflect on experiences of people who do not identify as male, and to recognize how different identities shape the way public space is used and experienced, as these perspectives are not really represented in street designs we have. At the same time, I am surprised by many people that are not fully aware of what the impact is of public space and environmental factors on people's behavior, on people's opportunities, and on daily experiences. Public space is a crucial enabler of access, and our streets can be powerful enablers, but often they became built barriers. I want to just illustrate one example of a woman I met, and I spoke to her in the elevator. She told me she was afraid to use the elevator alone because she is deaf. In the elevator, if the elevator were to break down and stop, the only way available of assistance was the intercom. But she would not be able to hear any response, as there is no visual elements to the intercom, and she would not be able to read lips. I think this is a good metaphor for how easily we create barriers in the built environment, often without realizing who is excluded as a result. But rather than me speaking about this topic myself, I'm very pleased to welcome two very amazing, inspiring speakers who will share their incredible perspectives and lived experiences with us. First, I would like to introduce you to Catarina Oliveira. She is from Portugal, and she is a creator of the Instagram page Rare Species on Wheels. I will not say the Portuguese name, as I'm not able to speak any Portuguese, and she is an activist for inclusion and accessibility for people with disabilities. She uses her social media, which has a huge platform already, to challenge prejudices and promote a more human and inclusive perspective. Through her work, she aims to educate and raise awareness about ableism, create spaces for dialogue and change. I recently became a fan of her Instagram page, and she does it with a lot of honesty and humor and absolutely no taboos. And we are also joined by Ingrid Thune. Ingrid is a lesbian and trans disability activist living in the north of Norway, in the land of northern lights and midnight sun. Ingrid is a board member of ENIL, which is the European Network of Independent Living. And Ingrid is also a member of Nordic Disability Council, and they are actively involved as organizer with Disability Queers Norway. Again, super happy that you both found the time to speak with us and discuss with us today, and I will give the stage to Catarina.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Good morning. I think for me it's good morning. I don't know in which time zone you are. I'm really glad to be here. And with Ingrid also, I'm sure that I will learn a lot here too. So first of all, I will describe myself for those, I don't know, who cannot see me. I'm a white woman with brown long hair, curly. Today is not very curly. I'm with a big silver rings and an orange shirt because it's cold here in Portugal. So I will not take any longer, so I will share my screen to start my presentation. Okay, so I think you are seeing the presentations, right? Okay, so the challenge was to to give you a little bit of my experience on gender and disability. I am a woman, and I am obviously no, but I am a woman with a disability. And in fact, because we all are a lot of layers and a lot of identities. I'm not just a woman, and I'm just a woman with a disability. I recently became a mother. I have a son with 6 months old. So I have this new layer in my life. I am a person with an acquired disability. I think this is very important for you to know, because I acquired my disability 10 years ago. For 27 years of my life, I was a person without disability, a woman without a disability. So I obviously faces some prejudices because I am a woman, but I didn't realize the ableism and the other prejudices that I face now that I'm a woman with a disability. I'm a wheelchair user, a permanent wheelchair user. I'm a paraplegic, so I don't have a function in my lower limbs, but I'm totally independent with my wheelchair. That is a freedom and not a prison. The prison are, in fact, the barriers that I'm going to address here in my time to speak to you. I'm a nutritionist. My base is in nutrition, but as Jolene said, I started my project in Instagram, and then I graduated in disability studies, and I'm actually now graduating in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So now I work with a company called Access Lab, where we work towards the inclusion of people with disabilities in the culture, the entertainment, the sports, every areas that normally we don't think about people with disabilities. And obviously, I am a CT user. I don't use my CT as often as I used when I walked, and this is a sad reality, because in fact I have a lot of barriers. So now when I go out alone, I cannot go so often to the downtown of my city because of the physical barriers that I'm going to address a little bit further. So in fact, I think when the gender and the disabilities in fact intersect, as Jolene said, because it's not the same being a woman or a man or someone that identifies as a man and having a disability. And I was thinking about a practical thing that I face every day, that I think is a good picture for you to have, a good picture for you to have about how things are different for people, for women and for men with disability. For example, to go to a bathroom is totally, you can imagine that it's totally different for someone to go to a bathroom if you are a man or if you are a woman. In fact, when you have a spinal cord injury, as myself, we go to the bathroom in a different way because we don't have our bladder working in the same way as a person that don't have a spinal cord injury. And for me, as a woman, it's totally different to do that than for a man, even though we have the same disability. And it's much more difficult for a woman than for a man. And it's very important that we have accessible bathrooms so that I can have dignity, and more than dignity, I can go to the bathroom. And this is a different thing that I think that people that project bathrooms don't often think when they project accessible bathrooms. So just a practical example on how these things are different and on how things are mainly projected thinking about the able body and the man without disability. And cities are not an exception. They are often, I think things are changing, although because we are here, but cities are designed around certain assumptions about the standard pedestrian. I think cities are still built thinking about the people, the person that walk, and not the person that rolls in a wheelchair. The able body, the people that don't have any care responsibilities, it's totally different for me to go outside without my son and with my son. And a lot of people tell me in the Instagram and in person that they often notice the barriers that I face when they have children and when they need to go outside with their children. And this is very interesting for us to think. And obviously, people that have predictable movement, that is a movement by her feet and not by some wheels, despite the wheels that you are thinking about. And obviously, the barriers are a lot. I don't have the time to talk about all of them, but obviously the ableism and the sexism intersect, because it's not the same for me to be in the street as a woman than is to be in the street as a man. And when you accumulate the layer of being a woman in the disability, the vulnerability is even higher in the streets, but in the world, unfortunately. The longer routes that I have to go because I am a wheelchair user, the constant detours that I have to face because I am a wheelchair user, the broken or the blocked infrastructure. We will see some videos, some short videos that I did for you to understand what I'm talking about. And obviously, this leads to a huge mental and physical fatigue when we talk about women that often in their daily lives, in their houses, they have more mental charge, more home labor than men. We can understand that this mental, specifically this mental fatigue, can be much bigger than when we talk about men. Obviously, it's not my case in my house, but it's the case of a lot of women. So for me, more time outside is not more freedom, unfortunately. And in Portugal, as I am a Portugal citizen, I think in a lot of streets, things are changing. I'm a realistic optimist, okay, but accessibility is often seen as a compliance and not as part of our culture and part of the start. It's often think in the end, okay, because I often face the barriers of no ramps, sidewalks blocked, temporary works that erase my access. The participation of people with disabilities is often too late in the process, okay? We are in the final process and then we think, oh, we need to think about accessibility because of the compliancy and not because we think that people with disabilities are citizens. They need to use the space, they need to be free in the space, and they want to use the city, okay? Then the public transports, it's a big barrier here in Portugal, not because specifically the transports, but because the path from the house to the bus stop, for example. This is a big barrier for a lot of people with disabilities. I can say here that fortunately I have my car, because if I depend from of the public transports, I didn't do half of the work that I do today. The parking spots and oftenly the floor that my wheels are rolling. It's a bit and a big obstacle in a lot of spaces here in Portugal. And yeah, I think this is, I will going to pass just some videos for you to understand, and I will talk with you during the videos because they are in Portuguese. But this video is in a street in Portugal, and you can see that the floor is not so bad, because for me in my wheelchair is not so bad, but I cannot enter in almost of the stores. The only place where I can enter is a car garage, okay? And this is very, very often. So I can tell you that when I was not a person with a disability, I loved to go to downtown and to go shopping, to have a coffee with some friends. Nowadays, if I want to go shopping, I do it online or I go to a shopping mall that I don't particularly like because I like free air, but it's totally impossible to enter in a lot of spaces here in Porto. I am from Porto, and this makes me, in fact, very, very sad. Then another video. This is in Lisbon, okay, but this I want to raise awareness to the lack of citizenship and the lack of awareness that people have when they park the cars in the sidewalks. And this was in a particular place, 𝐒𝐩𝐸𝐿𝐻 in Lisbon, where I could not roll in any of the sidewalks. I needed to go always by the street, and you can imagine that this is very dangerous. Here, I was not a mother, because if I was alone with my son, I would never go in the streets, because I will not go in the middle of the street in my son. So this is a huge problem in a lot of spaces, not only here in 𝐒𝐻𝐸𝐿𝐻, but this video is from here. Then the obstacles that I told you about in the sidewalks. Here I was with my boyfriend, but if I was alone with my child, we were here with our child, and here he need to left our child a little bit alone so that he can help me, because I could not go in the sidewalk anymore. And once again, in the middle of the street, this is very dangerous, but this is my daily life if I go out of my home. And obviously, this is very sad. Another thing that I often face is the lack of ramps. And you can see here that you have a crosswalk and you have ramps for the cars to the garage, and you don't have ramps to the people. I totally don't understand this, and this is very, very often, okay? So that you can see that this is the reality now. This was 2025, so it was not 50 years ago. So it's very important for us to change that. And just to finish, because I think my 15 minutes are ending, what can you do? And we will have the opportunity to talk in the end, but just a few steps. It's very important to design accessibility from the start, not as a fix at the end. This is very, very common. Oh, Katarina, please help us. We are in the end of the project and we didn't think about that, and now we need the compliance and we are thinking about it. No, in the start and not in the end. Tests in real life conditions, okay, with people. Treat people with disabilities as real users, not as exceptions, okay? We use the city every day and we are different between each other. Know who lives in your city. Use more than one consultant format. Normally I heard, oh, we did a public consultation and no one answered. Okay, but in which format do you use the public consultation? Please, this one is very important. Allocate budget for accessibility participation, okay? You are talking with experts, with professionals, and often with disabilities that, oh, we are just talking with someone with disability that is going to give us our opinion. No, we need to allocate budget for these things so that we can do this in a professional way, okay? This is very important. And this is connected with ableism, okay? Listen, involve, and close the loop. This is a very common mistake. The people that give you feedback, that work with you, don't often see the things practical, the action that this the result, the final result of the things that they participate. And then start small, but start early. I think this is very important. And just here some final video, because we often think about ramps, we often think about public transports, we often think about the street in the daily life, but we don't think about the street in a funny way. Okay, so now that I'm a mother, I really look for places where I can play with my kid and with my niece in an accessible way. And this is one example of an accessible playground in Portugal too. So a good example for you. And obviously, when people with disabilities are involved for the start, accessibility stops being a fix and becomes part of the design. And this is what we wish for. And don't forget, this is in Portuguese, but I will translate. Accessibility is for everyone, okay? In Portugal, is absolutely essential for 10% of the population. I believe that we are more than 10%, but okay, that's the numbers that we have. It's comfortable for 100% of population, and it's necessary for 40% of population, elderly people, pregnant people, people with child, and a lot of other people that benefit for accessibility. And a final video with an excellent example. This is in Spain. My boyfriend is from Spain, and I love Portugal, but I go to Spain often, and the difference is huge. Okay, this is just in one morning. The people, the different people with different mobility that I saw in the street is completely different from Portugal. Okay, elderly people using the public spaces, people with disabilities using the public spaces with freedom. And this makes me very happy, and this makes me, I want you to see that it's possible. Obviously, there is possible, and you know, but in Portugal, I don't see this diversity often in the street. Okay, and really to finish, I think inclusive streets need to reflect real lives and emerge when we design for diversity with real bodies, okay, real routines and real lives. Thank you for listening, and sorry if I take too long, but I really like to talk, and I'm totally available for your questions.
Thank you so much, Catarina. Muito obrigada. Thank you for sharing your perspective, your experiences, your challenges, and ideas for solutions with us. We already have one question here in the chat room for you. Please keep them coming. We have another speaker, and at the end, we will invite both of them to answer your questions. So don't be shy. Please put in your questions in the comments. Also, I shared Katarina's Instagram handle with you. There's a link in the chat, so please take a look at her profile and see what extraordinary work she's doing. And now we will move on to our next speaker who's waiting. Ingrid, they are a trans disability activist from north of Norway, so the land of the Northern Lights. Very excited to have them join us here today. Ingrid is a member of the Nordic Disability Council and also involved in the Disabled Queers Norway. Thank you so much for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. As presented, I'm Ingrid Tunam, and I'm glad to be here today. I'm a PhD candidate, so I'm a researcher as well as a disabled person. I research disability, sexuality, and independent living with a strong intersectional lens on gender and queerness. And when I talk about intersectionality, I mean how different identities cross and how having multiple identities, as Katarina mentioned, being a mother and being disabled gives her experience as disabled something else. And that's the same with being disabled and queer. I work both academically and in practice, and as well as activism. I'm engaged in how our urban environments, streets, sidewalks, public transport are not seen as neutral spaces. Our streets tell a silent story of who is welcome and who is considered to be an outsider. Streets are not a physical space, but pathways to inclusion or exclusion. So I'm very happy that I can speak here today. And in the picture, you see me. This is in front of some street arts. And I wanted to include this picture because my foot...
I think you need to click present. I'm just seeing the
Oh.
PowerPoint. So maybe
You're not seeing it. Weird.
If you share maybe
but
again.
I can re-share it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe because
Perfect.
I started sharing it before Katarina ended hers, so that's why. Can you see it now?
No, worked perfect.
Perfect. It was just because we were a bit behind. I started sharing it earlier to try and catch some time. Okay, so the introduction. Yeah, you can see the picture of me here. I'm sitting in my wheelchair in front of a street art picture, and I'm leaning my foot on a longboard. I can obviously not longboard because I don't have the ability to walk. But the reason why I included this picture is because if the roads are accessible for longboarding, biking, it's also accessible for a wheelchair. So if we make sure that our streets can be used by all different means of transportation, it's also easier for us as a disabled person. And just as a disclaimer, I say use identity first language. I say disabled person because that's how I feel identified the most with me. And also because I feel that if you need to be reminded that I am a human being, to think about my inclusion with saying person first, then maybe that is a problem. So for me, my disability is an important part of my identity, so that's why I identify as disabled person. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the barriers and challenges. Building on what Katarina said, streets, sidewalks, and public spaces are political spaces. They are not neutral because design choices, social norm, and planning practices can either enable or restrict participation. So it's important to put the blame not on the disabled person or say that my body is wrong, because my body is not wrong. The problem is the structures of society and the lack of accessibility. An example of this is if I come home to all of you now and I fix your ceiling, so I make your ceiling to be 1.2 meters, I am quite sure that all of you would be disabled. You would not be able to walk around in your home. But your body is not any more wrong or right than it was 2 minutes ago before I fixed your ceiling. Because disability is not a fault with the individual. Disability is something that happens when something is inaccessible. When I meet a stair, the stair is the problem. I am never the problem. So this is a good way to think that good city planning can disable or enable all of us. Often accessibility is treated as a technical requirement, as a checklist, rather than a step pathway to full inclusion. It's important to have early consultation with people most affected, and it's often missing, so it leads to solutions that are not working. And one of the main issues that I see when I navigate around Europe, I travel quite a lot, when it comes to accessibility, I feel it's often overlooked when we talk of temporary solution put in place due to, for example, building project, and you haven't considered disabilities. So I have often been forced, as Katarina, to navigate heavy traffic because of different temporary solutions. Often they are not very temporary at all because it can take months, even years, for building project or roadworks to be finished. And if you take one thing back from my speech today, I hope it is to be more thoughtful of accessibility and inclusion when you are planning a temporary solution to ensure equal access to the city at all times, not just at the end point. And when we talk about the barriers and challenges, the concept of intersectionality, as I mentioned in my introduction, is needed. We have to understand how our different identities can increase and reduce how we experience the barrier we encounter. Here are three pictures. Here are three pictures that show how streets affect us. Disabled people are often assumed not to be queer, but only disabled. But we are as diverse as anyone else. We can be lesbian, gay, trans, and so on. And queerness often affect how you perceive safety. The picture here, the first one, I'm enjoying a coffee at a street cafe, and it's a big enough sidewalk that there can be a street cafe and I can park safely with my wheelchair. On the second picture, you show me in a long walkway that is completely fenced in. Both sides of the walkway is fenced. It also has a ceiling, and it feels quite unsafe for both women and queer people. You can see it's very long. It's about 3 kilometers long with no possibility to leave or find an alternative route. It's also quite dark, which can make it difficult to navigate for people with low vision. Women and queer people and disabled people are more likely to experience form of harassment in public spaces. And if you have multiple marginalized identities, the risk might increase. This means that being able to reach safety in public spaces is quite important, both in terms of this walkway, but also in terms of being able to access security guards, being able to access a toilet or take a lift without needing a key or having to talk to someone and find the right attendant. In unsafe situation, you don't have time to locate the right person or the right key in the right place or access a lift or a toilet. It can make a public space feel less accessible for many people. There have been times when it's necessary to just run into the toilet to hide from someone who is harassing you, and this safety is often not possible for disabled people as disabled toilets often are locked. It can also be a problem for those of us who have invisible disabilities. For example, if you have a stoma pouch and you need to run to an accessible toilet, but then it's locked and you are having problem with your stoma pouch, and as you are holding on, being afraid of leak, you have to run out and find the right person with the right key and maybe also argue that you have an invisible disability. These are challenges that can make it harder to navigate society. And as you see the last picture, I'm sitting in front of a memorial site with a lot of flowers. And here is a way of how we have to think of the temporary solution also about accessibility. In Norway in 2022, we had a terrorist attack against the queer community. And when they had the memorial where you went to memorize the ones who passed away, it was not accessible. So those of us who were queer and disabled were not able to put down our flowers independently. We had to ask someone for help to put down flowers because there were not any thought about how to put up the memorial in a way that could be inclusive of all queer people, also queer disabled people. So that's just one example I wanted to. And then we're going to be a little bit more on the positive note. This slide, Life Should Be Lived, has 4 pictures that all tell a story about real life experience of what accessible street and accessible cities do to us, both for the physical inclusion as well as the feeling of belonging and happiness. First, to the first left, you see me on an accessible beach in Nice, France, where it's as you can maybe see in the picture, it's not swimming time. It's a bit cold. There is accessible swimming there as well, but I am just posing on the beach. There is clouds, but I'm enjoying the fresh beach air on the same ability as everyone else. And then to the right top, you see me walking with a friend in a market in Germany. And what was very cool with this market, I could not do any of the carousels. They were not accessible, which is fine. But what I've never seen before is that I was able to independently buy food. I was able to independently pay for doing the activities, throwing the ball and so on, because they put up ramps for all the activities. So that was really good. The 4th picture shows, and the 5th picture shows me being physically active in my hometown of Tromsø. One, I'm in an electric wheelchair navigating a path in the forest, and the other, I'm using an accessible bike path that is made accessible for everyone, for people with strollers, people in wheelchairs, and I'm doing a racing wheelchair that shows how it's possible to be included in your local community. A couple of years ago, I spoke with a politician who didn't understand why accessible public spaces are so important. He said that disabled people only need to access the store and the hospital. Why do the whole city center need to be accessible? And this is based on a myth. We disabled people do not only need to survive, and we are much more than patients. We are human beings like everyone else, and we need to be able to live our lives wherever we want to be and with all the different interests that we have. As my next slide shows when streets meet nature, and here you can see 3 pictures of different accessible way of me to enjoy nature and why this is so important. The first is in my hometown next to the sea. The next one is in Hamburg, Germany, where all of the hills were marked with how much decline and increase it would be, so you can plan if you were able to go there or not. And the last picture is from Oslo, and it shows a park, and you can see part of the park bench. Next to the park bench, there is an empty space. That empty space is made so that a wheelchair user can park next to the bench and sit together with their family instead of in front or on the edge of the. And you can also sit there and enjoy the flowers, which I found to be a good example of inclusive design. So when it comes to the practical steps we can take for make mobility system truly inclusive. So the first step is when starting to work, an important distinction should be made. Are you doing this only to comply with the law or to ensure true inclusion? And I hope we all can agree that true inclusion should be the goal. And this could be achieved through community engagement and listening to more voices, as lived experience is key. It also needs to have an intersectional approach and listening to more voices than just one. we disabled people are quite diverse. We also have different backgrounds, different type of disability, different accessibility needs. So you need to listen to multiple people to be sure that you're planning a city that includes all disabled people, not just some. And there should be multiple ways for you to contact and for people to contact the city planners or builders and to reach out in different formats. We communicate in different ways. There should be a way to do it in sign language. There should be information in Braille. There should be possible for me to send easy language information about the project and how I can give feedback in easy language. And you should listen to all and advertise in more than one way, not only online or only physical. And there should be made, and equal with Katarina, one of these pictures are from Spain, because I am as well love going to Spain because it's so accessible there. And this shows how I can access the beach again, and the other show a cobblestone picture from Pride, where I was struggling before to access Pride due to it being in cobblestone areas or areas of uninclusiveness in Oslo. After working with Oslo Pride, they did changes, so now they know that queer disabled people exist and it's more accessible today than it used to be. And I think the most important takeaway should be that universal design is to prefer over adaptations. And it should happen at the first step. It shouldn't be an afterthought. Should be on the forefront of the whole process of building something new or renovating something old. So the conclusion for today, first, I want to say it's a little fun fact. You can see a picture here of the Northern Lights. I live in a city with Northern Lights and a lot of snow. And as you might know, those of you who are from the north, snow can be quite a disabling factor. A lot of times snow is put in places that make it harder to navigate with a wheelchair, but this picture is a picture of a pathway that is perfectly mowed so that I can also enjoy the Northern Lights dancing above my city. And a fun fact is that this presentation includes pictures from 7 different cities in 5 different countries. And to conclude, streets and public spaces are not neutral. They reflect our social hierarchies and design priorities. Inclusive streets are possible, but only when planners, policymakers, and community designers are listening to people that have real lived experience and is trying to include everyone. I believe that this can happen, but your contribution is really, really valuable. I look forward to questions and discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ingrid. Thank you for sharing your experiences, and also a shout out to Spain, apparently. It seems like they're doing something right. And if we have anybody here from Spain, we'd love to hear from you and maybe get more questions in the chat room. So Ingrid, thank you so much to both you, Ingrid, and Katarina, for joining us, sharing all these experiences. We're getting some feedback already here that your presentations, your experiences are resonating. And of course, there's a lot of work to be done on the city level. So please keep sharing your Q&A, your questions in our Q&A box. But right now, I will give the floor back to my colleague, Julianne. We received some questions from our cities in the Just Streets project, and she will address those first, and then we will go straight back to the chat room and answer your questions. So, Julianne, it's all you now.
Thank you also from my side to both speakers. I think you inspired all the cities that are attending here today. I just remembered on the top of my head, there's a research that came out that 3% of people with a disability leave without checking maps. And it just stumbles me that only 3% goes out without just strolling or wandering. I want to make a little bridge from Ingrid's presentations to the question that I got from Milan. I think Emma is also here. So Milan is one of our pilot cities in the Just Streets project, and they have also a universal cycling plan from 𝐒𝐭, an inclusive approach for cycling lanes, but also in the project they're doing for Just Streets, unfortunately, associations representing people with disabilities ultimately chose to not take part in the engagement process. Emma, are you here? Maybe you could ask the question from your end. on your
Yes, I'm
communication.
here. Nice to
Hello,
meet you.
Emma.
Hi, hello. Yes, you gave a perfect like picture of it. So my question is, we try to include and contact as many local associations as we could. Ultimately, very little decided to participate. So, what is my question? Sorry, I want to read it. Drawing from your experience of gender and disability, what would you identify as the main communication barriers that prevent people with disability from engaging in the participatory process? And what else can we try in a different way? We try to contact by email, by phone, and walking in the streets that we are analyzing. So maybe they weren't there or they didn't, and while contacting them, they didn't answer. Well, some answered that they weren't interested. Thank you.
I can go first. Obviously, I think the problem is that the barriers sometimes are not just in the communication, are a little bit in the back, because I think a lot of people with disabilities are, from my experience, and because I work with a community also here in Portugal, are a little bit, I don't know if this word exists, but I will say it, disbelieve. They don't believe that the things are going, in fact, to change, or are going, in fact, to have an application in the real life. So even myself working with the community, I have this difficulty, even though we work with different formats, with different ways of reaching people with disabilities. I feel that the major barrier now is that, oh, I'm not interested in participate because this is always going to a dead end, is not going anywhere. So I think people don't believe that things have consequence and have real applications. And obviously this is a barrier that I don't have I don't know if Ingrid have a solution, but I don't have a solution for this. So I think we need to do our part. That is, try to be the more open and the more accessible that we can be in our communication. Try not just to reach people with disabilities in the associations or in the institutions, because as Ingrid said, and it really reached me, the idea that we only see people with disabilities in the hospitals, and the hospitals is the only place where people often talk to me directly, because I am the sick person in the hospital because I use a wheelchair. But when I go to a cinema or to a public space that is not something medical connected, and normally people don't even talk to me. So it's really important that we look for people in the society, not only in specific places. So yeah, I think the problem is a little bit more bigger than just the communication in my experience. I don't know if Ingrid want to add something.
Yeah, I absolutely agreed with what Katerina said. Of course, communication is important. And as I said, multiple formats, multiple ways. We have a lot of luck in my organization to use Instagram, because of a lot of younger people are in Instagram, as well as Discord. We have a Discord server where we communicate with our members, because most of our members doesn't use Facebook. But when it comes to overall making people participate in things, the challenge, I think, is the times now, because it's quite expensive. So we have to have an intersectional perspective on things. Things are getting more expensive. Leaving the house is expensive. Will your expenses be reimbursed if you have to take a taxi, if you have to take the tram, but you need to bring your mother? Can you also pay for the mother that has to accompany you because it's not accessible? I think a lot of things now has to be the intersectional with the socio-economical principle, that there is a socio-economical barriers that disabled people unfortunately are more prone to. We are often poor. We are often poorer and in poorer health than others. So we have to think intersectional. How can we be included both in terms of our disability, but also in terms of our socioeconomic status? That I think is the shortest I can. I could speak about for an hour, but I'm gonna give you the short answer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much as well from my end. I think maybe Braga is here as well. Maybe one more question from the cities, and we had also really great questions from the chat. I think Sandra, maybe you are here. I know Braga is working on a school environment, so working with kids as well, and they practice universal accessibility. But they had a question on the early design stages. Sandra or Filipa, I don't know if anyone is here to tell the question. Maybe not. Then maybe 𝐒𝐤𝐞𝐚𝐤𝐿. I think I saw people from 𝐒𝐤𝐞𝐚 joining. Okay, then maybe we can go for a question from the chat first, and maybe some people could go afterwards.
Okay, I will take over
Thanks,
from
Barbara.
here. The first question we received was from Romania, from Maria, who wanted to tell Katerina, congratulations on what you're doing. And her question is, has your entire civic movement managed to change anything from the point of view of local public administration?
Well, I will be short. Obviously, I'm involved with some city halls, not only with my in my city, and we can see a lot of changes. We can see a lot of small, big changes in different cities. But I think the major impact of my work, specifically in the social media, is that sometimes it accelerates some changes that if I only go by the formal ways of saying the things that are wrong, sometimes things are a little bit slower. And I want to raise awareness for one thing that I often hear when I have meetings with councils and with different cities. That is, oh, you need to complain. And I think we need to be aware that our lives cannot be a big complaint, okay? Sometimes I just want to buy some rice, or I just want to have a drink with some friends, and I don't want to complain. So I think it's very important that we can be more active. And the social media often, even though I always, or almost always, I complain in a formal way, when I put some videos in the social media, and this happened in my Instagram page, some videos that become viral because of lack of accessibility, sometimes people feel obliged in a public way to change that in a more quick way. So I think this is a change that I see with my work because of a lot of people seeing it in the news, it appears, and then people need to react. But I would really love that things would be different and people can be more proactive and not only reactive to a complaint.
So there's a follow-up question. So is it difficult to convince decision makers that people with disabilities should be involved from the start of a project? Or is it more that they didn't consider it, but once the issue is raised, they are happy to? What are your thoughts on this? That's a question for either of our speakers.
You can go, Ingrid, if you want.
Again, I think it depends on the policymakers, but often I think, as Katarina said, people are being defensive. If you're like, then they're like, but is it really that bad? Are you sure? Did you ask about the ramp? But are you sure it was not just you that did something wrong? Or did you see the sign for the other entrance? Like, there's always like excuses. A lot of times they are trying to be defensive, but I feel in Norway, at least, the discussion is shifting because we did implement the CRPD this year. So now the CRPD is part of the law. So we can actually say when we're not included. That, but excuse me, but have you seen the CRPD? And they have to listen. So I think that will be a change. We're seeing some lawsuits here now that might change how the public administration can and should relate to disabled people. So I think using the laws is important. That there are most of the European part of the European Union are supposed to follow the CRPD already. So using the CRPD, I've felt had a change, and using it to show to policy that this is not my issue, it's actually your issue because it's policy and you're supposed to already follow it. I am actually just helping you. I'm showing how you can be better at following the policy you're supposed to be following, instead of them trying to switch the narrative and saying that I am the problem, I do the same as I did to you. Actually, it's the street that is the problem. I am not the problem. I'm just being a good citizen, telling you how you can be more inclusive. And I think that works.
Thank you, Ingrid. And back to Katarina, we have a question from Carl from citychanges.org. Is it possible,
Sorry,
or do
Paula,
you
I've
know?
also enabled to the speaker, the attendees to ask their question directly. So it may be nice to bring Carl just
If
with the
Carl
video
is still
on,
on
so we
the-
can
on the
see
Zoom.
him. To ask the question directly is always a bit nicer.
Carl, are you there?
I think he raised his hand earlier.
I know he was.
Yeah, I am. Hello there. Hi.
Perfect. Well, go ahead, Carl.
Sorry, you caught me feeding my cat. Yeah, no, it was really interesting to see at the end of your video there, Katerina, the wide accessible streets, which obviously is really, really important. And actually, Ingrid, you've kind of already started to answer the question I had, because you showed that park bench with like a cutout, which is suitable for wheelchairs there. But it's quite interesting, whenever we see accessible streets, quite often it seems that they're only accessible, whereas we know that there are other elements that maybe should be included, as in with other people, for example, they should be fun and sociable and safe and whatever else. And I just wondered if you knew of examples where this has actually been done, or is it still so new to cities that we've got so far to go? And also, I mean, just as an additional question, maybe, we're always talking about including people with disabilities in creating better cities, but are they ever encouraged to actually be at the forefront of the start of the change, rather than being involved in change that other people are already putting forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. I remember, I totally agree with you that because people think about accessibility and about people with disabilities in clusters, like in I don't know, in rigid spaces, like I need to project an accessible street. So it's a plain street, just that, so that the wheelchair users can go and don't make me a bad day. So I think we don't see the overall. It's like in the culture, for example, I work a lot with the culture, and people often think, oh, okay, a room for people with disabilities to see the concert. Okay, so in this space, people in wheelchairs can stay and stay here, just here, and see this. So we don't think about the overall and the experience of living in the street. But to be short, I remember about a city in País Vasco. I don't know how to say in English. País Vasco in Spain. That it's called 𝐻𝐸𝐴𝐻, I think, that had a prize about the green city, and it was a city very green and with a lot of trees and very, very accessible. I think País Vasco overall was a good example of accessibility where I've been. Bilbao too, but Bilbao is a little bit more gray. But Victoria was a good example of a green city, an accessible one that I remember here in the short terms. Ingrid, I don't know if you want to add something.
I think what we can take away from the Norwegian culture, nature is very, very in core of our culture. So a lot of times, actually, like I showed some parks that are accessible because we see it actually when you are in the hospital and they want to check your mental health. One of the question is, when were you last in nature? That is how much nature means for the Norwegian. So for us, I can see many good examples of we have roads that are leading out in the water with and along the mountains where you can go with your wheelchair. There are parks in the cities like the one I showed from Oslo, where having a wheelchair is not the second solution. It's as equal. It's not like, okay, the wheelchair path is that way, the other path is that way, that there is one path for everyone. And I think that's so important because nature is good for the soul. And to be sure that you can be able to work, be part of society, if you have an acquired disability or if you have an illness that is progressing, I think being able to be in nature is equal for all. And loving nature can be an equal experience. So I think using nature and making sure that things are green and colorful is important. And also what I was thinking of your question, Carl, is that the street that Katarina showed, if I was visually impaired, it would be so hard for me to navigate because it's so gray. So having colors can also be an accessibility choice. So I think it's a really good question and an important takeaway that it doesn't need to be gray. It can also be colorful, and that can be helpful for some.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Well, we are slowly getting to the 1 hour mark. And we regret that we will not be able to ask you all the questions in the chat room. There is one though, and I want to say that Spain has entered the chat, so I feel like I'm obliged to ask it now. And this is from Clementine in Barcelona, who works as a mobility project executive. So her question is, how would you recommend that to reach to the collective to be included in these decision-making processes? So if, going from someone in public consultation processes, how do they reach out to these groups? What's your advice?
Can I answer first because I have to run because I'm on my way to another meeting, but I'm going to answer very quick. I think to reach people, we talked a little bit about it earlier about Milan, but I think another point I didn't make there was that also the way we talk. How do we organize it? Are we organizing like a sit-down meeting, like we are thinking, oh, we do with our fellow politicians and bureaucrats, or are we thinking these are people with lived experience? Can we be in a circle? Can we walk around? Can we be outside when we're doing it? Can we meet the people that we are meeting and not thinking about inviting people to this public room? And now you're going to talk about very important topics and you sit down. For a lot of people, that is a barrier because they're like, oh, but if I have to go to the public municipality building, am I smart enough? Am I wise enough? No, but what if we meet in the park? And then we talk about how the city can be more accessible in an environment where you feel safe. I think this can include more people with intellectual disabilities. It can include people with invisible disabilities and people that have sensory issues, to be more open that a meeting doesn't have to be what we think a meeting is between the culture and how it has explored, but a meeting can be something new and something more exciting in way of getting to hear people's voices. And thank you so much. Now I have to run, but thank you. It was great.
Thank you, Ingrid.
Thank you. If you look in the chat room, we just shared links to sign up for our two more upcoming webinars. They're going to be next Tuesday and Tuesday in 2 weeks, same time, same place. The second one is going to be about gender and migration. And the third one, gender and youth. So if either of these is of interest to you or both, please click the links in the chat. They are also published on our LinkedIn if you miss them here. And we hope to see you then next Tuesdays, January 22nd and February 3rd.
Exactly. Special
And let me
thanks
share.
also to our speakers for taking the time today and all the really great questions. I think the cities are leaving inspired, and anyone else working in the disability inclusion. So yeah, I hope to see you both or all next weeks.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Enjoy your day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.